All right, well, welcome everybody. Welcome to Turkey Hunting 101. We're really excited. This is our first webinar here of the spring. We have a whole series lined up here between this week, next week, and maybe even the following week. Dan, you
There,
got
yeah, we're pretty
you-
packed for the next couple
yeah.
weeks with webinars and
So
workshops. Yeah.
check it out. You already signed up for this one, so you know how to sign up for the other one. So yeah, so we're starting here with 101, then we'll have 102, and then turkey calling, and then turkeyology. So we have four whole webinars this spring to get going on. So in this one, we will be starting off pretty light. But to get going here, we got myself, Jason, Dan, Stevens, and then we also have a new uh, student helper outer. What do you want to call him, Dan?
Student help router, I like that.
So this is Jack. So you'll see him on some of the webinars, and he might even make it out to some of our workshops too. So welcome aboard, Jack. Thanks for the help. All right. So with that, we'll get going here. So just some reminders with our webinars. If this is your first webinar with us, or if you haven't been on a webinar with us before, hold on, there we go. So your mics are turned off, your webcams are turned off, so don't worry about that. If you have a question at all, you can put that in the Q&A section or in the chat window, and we'll get to it. If the person presenting doesn't see it, then myself or Jack will grab it and say, "Hey, we got a question here," and then we'll address it as we go. We like your questions; they make us go on tangents, and we love tangents. So feel
Especially this
free to
guy.
ask away. Oh, but are you talking about yourself?
I am. I pointed directly at
Okay.
myself. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't have the camera up. I knew it. So yes, especially Dan. So we'll have a recording of this put up on YouTube here in the coming days, so you can go back and reference this, and we'll send that out to you all. So yeah. So as I was saying, the 101 course, we're going to really go into how you can get into turkey hunting in Illinois because it's kind of a process. So we'll go over how to find access, how to get the licenses properly, and then kind of the regulations that we have. And then we'll get into a little bit of turkey vocalization just to have something fun at the end. But the majority of this is going to be about the regulations and getting access. Then 102 is when we're going to start getting into more about the strategies and a decoy placement and things like that. So come back for the 102 course if you want to hear more about how to actually turkey hunt and get out and get successful. And we have
And,
had
and like
people,
Jason said, can you stay on that slide for just a quick
yeah,
second,
sure
Jason?
thing.
We've really designed these to build off of each other instead of because if we were to just do all of our turkey content in one go, it would take 5 or 6 hours. And so we've really broken it into about an hour in 15-ish sections. So again, tonight's really going to be regulation focused, wild turkey ecology. But again, we're coming at it from the lens of understanding turkey behavior so that we can actually better our strategies as hunters, right? And so we do talk about turkey behavior and ecology quite a bit tonight, but I want to emphasize it's not just, oh, this is fun to know. It's really focused on this is what us as hunters need to know and what us hunters can utilize in our strategic planning process. All right, so we're going to just quickly go over some lingo that you're going to hear us use throughout this presentation, throughout 102, throughout the calling webinar, and throughout the turkeyology webinar, and just kind of set the stage again, because you're going to hear us use a lot of terminology as we go through this. So I think it's important that we all understand what I'm saying when I say a certain word. So beard is the hairy protrusion from the chest. It looks like a hair kind of dangling down. It's typically on males. I don't want to say it's always on males because there are instances where we have bearded hens, so bearded females. However, the vast majority of time we're going to be referring to a male turkey when we talk about that specific beard. The spurs are going to be the bony hooks off the back of the legs, and these are basically used territorial. So when two males are fighting, they will spur each other, kind of like chickens and pheasants do. But those spurs can be quite dangerous. And so you'll hear us when we talk about recovery after the shot. One of the biggest things that you need to be aware of is those spurs. And so just like a deer, when we harvest an animal, we don't immediately go up to it and start, picking it up, taking pictures of it. We want to first confirm that it's completely dead. And one of the big reasons, especially for turkey, is those spurs. Those spurs have a lot of energy behind them, and they can really do some damage to your wrist, to your hand. So always watch out for those spurs. The fan is going to be this spread of tail feathers that you can see in this picture here in the bottom right. A tom is going to be your mature male. A jake is going to be your immature male, so a younger male. And then a hen is going to be your females. And I think it's important to note that we are talking about the eastern wild turkey today. And so there's actually a lot of different subspecies of turkeys. They're all considered the same species, Meleagris gallopavo, but they are different subspecies. And so you can see in this map here in the blue color, all of that range is going to be the eastern wild turkey. So that's really what we're going to be focusing on throughout this webinar, throughout our webinar series, just because, again, that's what we have in Illinois. But what I do want to emphasize is a lot of this kind of transcends eastern wild turkey. A lot of turkey behavior is fairly similar across different subspecies and across different geographies. And so one of the things that a lot of hunters really love about turkeys, and I do too, I just personally have never had the time or the money to be able to do it, but there's people that will try to travel to different areas and get one of each of the subspecies during a specific year or during a couple years. And so you'll hear this term grand slam and all these different slams that are out there by the really hardcore turkey hunters. And it's them trying to go to all these different geographies and really focus on trying to get a turkey of each subspecies in each year. So you can see all the different slams listed here. Again, there's about seven different subspecies of wild turkey, or six, and then we have the ocellated turkey, which is technically a completely different species. But again, we're going to really focus on the eastern tonight. Yeah, so here's kind of a quick visual description of the different subspecies and the different species. And one thing I want to point out is this ocellated turkey. I mean, I know with the advent of AI these days, you see a picture like that on Facebook or social media, you're like, yeah, that's AI. It didn't know how to make a turkey. But in reality, that's exactly what they look like. So they're really cool birds. But again, you can see the eastern wild turkey here, and they all look fairly similar. But you'll notice the eastern kind of has the very cream colored dark band around the tail feather, where the Goulds and the Merriams, that's a little lighter colored. Now, the cool thing is the eastern wild turkey are the biggest on average of the subspecies, so they're going to be fairly big birds. And if you've never seen a turkey up close and in person, we are talking about a 20 to 22 pound bird. So these are big birds. They're meaty. And what I do want to emphasize right up front is these are what we call gallinaceous birds. So these are birds that essentially are ground nesting. And so that term gallinaceous means ground nesting. And what that means is they're not nesting up in trees like a lot of your 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 sound or your normal songbirds and things like that. These are ground nesters, just like pheasants, quail, things like that. And it sounds like we did have some people start to figure out the sound. So Jason, if you need to come back on and kind of give us a walkthrough, if you figure out what worked for him, let us know. But we'll kind of continue on. So yeah, these are gallinaceous birds, and so they've evolved differently than the vast majority of bird species that are out there. And that's a really great question, Derek. Are they different phenotypic differences? Yes. So there are um, it really is just kind of phenotypic, which when you get into terms like that, what he's asking is really physical appearance, and so or physical appearance. There is evidence that these subspecies could breed across and hybridize, which is why they haven't technically been fully split into species level distinctions. That's just kind of how taxonomists work and how biologists work. Is usually if they can interbreed, they'll keep that as a subspecies. If they don't have the ability to interbreed, a lot of times they'll kind of split them. But again, gallinaceous birds, and so they've evolved to be very poor flyers. But what that means is they have very strong legs and they have huge breast meat, breast muscles, where they don't have a ton of wing muscles. And so one thing that I think is really cool about turkeys is just watching the way they walk. They really have this kind of waddle to them, but when they want to evade a predator or evade danger, they have the ability to use those big legs, and man, can they move. It's almost like that old cartoon, Wile E. Coyote chasing the Roadrunner. You could replace that Roadrunner with a wild turkey, and I think the same story would hold. When they want to move fast, they can. And so that was one thing when I first started turkey hunting, in my like when I was 15, 16-ish, I did not expect them to be that fast. And so I kept thinking, oh, I can sneak up on this turkey and no problem. No, they will put their head down and just beeline it across the field and run, 20 to 25 miles per hour. So they're very fast and very mobile on the ground. They are not great flyers. And so when we talk about roost behavior, so turkeys sleep up in the trees, right? They're ground nesting. They nest on the ground, but they will sleep up in the trees at night. When they fly down, it literally sounds like a 747 trying to fly through the forest because they're clunky flyers. They're huge birds with giant wingspans, and they're just crashing into every little branch as they're coming off that roost. So gallinaceous birds, ground nesting, a lot of fun, and I think that's kind of all I have to say on this slide, Jason.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I just can't believe how beautiful well, they all are, but that oscillated one is just crazy. Um,
It's on my bucket list for sure.
yeah, but yeah, so a lot of the issues with speakers, I mean, if you can hear me speaking, then your speakers are working. But it was my guess would be like people who have different headphones throughout the day, or maybe a microphone that has a headphone plug in it or something like that. It changes what the speaker setting the yeah, the
Gotcha.
speaker setting is. So you got to make sure you pick the speaker that is what you're listening to right now. That way you can hear it through the speakers.
Perfect. And Jason, we got a question about posting the link to the Eventbrite page. If you could do that right quick.
Mm.
All right. One thing I really this is something that I personally am very fond of. Is not a lot of people realize that turkey hunting, deer hunting too, but obviously we're at a turkey webinar tonight, is a fairly new practice in Illinois. If you look at some of the other states like Pennsylvania and some of these other states that were, early colonies, they have this very rich history of hunting. Where in Illinois, I think it's important for us to remember our first modern deer season was not until the 70s. Our first turkey season was not until the 70s. We basically extirpated them completely from the landscape. Thanks, Jack, for providing that link. They were completely extirpated from the landscape and had to be brought back in because we basically took so many off the landscape. And so there was very substantial reintroduction efforts. And I think this is something that us as hunters and conservationists can really put our hat on, is that we were able to bring this species back to Illinois and back to a population that's now thriving enough that we can actually have a sustainable harvest year over year over year over year. So throughout the late 50s, throughout the 60s and 70s, they went out and brought turkey in from neighboring states. This is Jason talked about me going off on tangents. This is going to be one of those tangents just because it's a really fun story. But
It
it's
is.
important to know that we can't sell wildlife in the United States. Wildlife is technically owned by everybody. It's held in the collective trust, the public trust. So nobody owns wildlife. If you own a farm and there's a deer on your farm, you don't own that deer. We all do, which allows the states to regulate hunting, to regulate harvest through all these different regulations and stuff. But what that does is it prohibits states from buying wildlife from other states. And so what they do is when they want, like, let's say when Illinois wants turkey, they will trade some of their, I think, some of the historic ones, they traded largemouth bass to some states, and those states sent us turkey. They used our largemouth bass to stock some of their ponds, and we used their turkeys to restart our wildlife population. So it's really cool seeing how states will kind of navigate through this system. But what I really want to emphasize again is there was no turkeys in Illinois until really the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And now we have a population that arguably exceeds 100,000 birds in the state. So I think that that's really worth championing and highlighting. Because again, if these conservationists back in time didn't put in the effort, we would not be here today talking about turkey hunting. We just wouldn't.
No, I mean there wasn't a turkey season from 1903 to 1970. So
Yeah, it's
that's a whole
crazy, isn't
lifetime.
it? Yeah.
It's a lifetime of not being able to hunt turkeys in the
Yep.
state. So they worked on them, and I think the first harvest was about 25, and it was all down in Shawnee, and then now like this past year is probably about 18,000 give or take. So it's gone up quite a
Big
bit.
jump. Yep.
Yes, it is.
All right, so what we're really talking about today is one of the coolest parts of turkey hunting is that we get to hunt during their primary breeding and courtship seasons. Now, obviously, for some species like deer, we get to hunt through the rut, some things like that, but turkey is really one of those species that arguably would be very tough to hunt if we were only hunting them outside of this breeding season. And so you can look at fall harvest numbers. Fall harvest, so we can hunt turkeys during the fall. There is a short fall shotgun season where you can use a firearm, and there's also that archery season that basically runs coincidentally with the deer archery season. Harvest is a lot more reduced, and it's because we don't get to use the courtship and the breeding behavior essentially against those turkeys. And that's why I talked earlier that I really like this chess match between hunters and turkey. And that's what I really find appealing about turkey hunting. And it's largely because we're hunting in the spring when they are in their breeding period. And so What that means for me as a hunter, obviously, I want to really focus on their spring behavior. But two, think about your scouting efforts. So we just actually had a mentored hunt last weekend. We were doing a controlled pheasant hunt. And Jason and I were with an individual, and we were walking along the river, and we saw a flock of about, it was a huge winter flock, which that's typical behavior in the winter, is they will all group up into these massive flocks. And there was probably 80 to 100 turkeys in this one field. Now, in the back of my head, I'm like, oh man, this means I want to be here in spring. Where in reality, it's a completely different habitat use, different. So I like to see turkeys in the fall and winter, but I'm not logging that away as information for my next hunting season, right? Because they're going to drastically shift their home range. The toms will be grouped up during this time of year, but as spring gets closer and closer and they get ready to breed, they're going to start breaking off and going into their own home ranges. And sometimes that'll be miles away. And so that's one thing I really want to emphasize right now is scouting timing is everything. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. Turkeys are what we call crepuscular. So we have the term diurnal, which means active during the daylight. We have nocturnal, which means active during the nighttime. And then we have this term crepuscular, which essentially means active during the twilight hours. So that first hour of the day and that last hour of the day are usually the times you're going to see the most bird activity because they are crepuscular. Now, one thing we are always trying to fool with the turkey, if you think back to deer hunting, we're trying to fool their nose, right? Their nose is their primary mode of predator detection. With turkeys, it's those eyes. Those eyes, they will give you away and it will break your heart. And I swear, there's times their eyesights are so good they can see you freaking blink. You'll think you're so still, you're not moving, and then all of a sudden they lock eyes on you, and that was enough. They have incredible, incredible eyesight, and they can see full color. So we are not wearing blaze orange. So we'll talk about safety quite a bit later on. But with turkey hunting, we are not wearing blaze orange because we would stick out like a sore thumb. They'd see us. And we would never ever kill the turkey wearing blaze orange. So you want to be in full camo. You want to match your camo pattern to the terrain as much as possible, but you really, really want to minimize movement and keep that movement to a minimum. And one thing I'll just kind of, I'm sure we're going to get questions on this later, but I'll just kind of try to nip it in the bud a little bit right now. One question we get a lot is about your firearm, right? And so does your firearm need to be camouflage for turkey hunting? And I will say it certainly helps, but it's not a requirement. One thing I will say, and this is something I have to particularly worry about because I'm a glasses wearer too, is worrying about glare. And so a lot of the finishes on shotguns, a lot of that barrel is kind of a high gloss blue finish to it, right? It's a blued barrel. Try to dull that up, whether it's just take some camo wrap and just kind of wrap it up. But that's the kind of movement that they're really going to see when you move that shotgun barrel or your glasses and that glare kind of, they're going to pick that up from, hundreds of yards away across the field. So we want to minimize that kind of visual cues to the turkeys that were there as much as possible.
Yeah, this is a good tip for any hunter with any turkey or even deer hunting. Always hunt where if you're like trying to be staked out along a field edge or something like that, don't hunt on the west side of the field looking east in the morning. It's gonna be the first part of the field that gets hit by light in the day. Same if you're in a tree stand, don't be on the east facing side of a tree, because
You'll
the
be
sun's
lit up
gonna
like a beacon. That sun will
yeah,
just be painting your face. Yeah, yeah.
it will light you up. And also, animals realize this, and they actually are more likely to come out. I've seen this hunting, that they'll wait until the sun is almost all the way up. That's why mid-morning hunts are so crucial for field edges, because they'll wait for the sun to light up that whole field until there's about 20 yards left that the tree canopy that's right there that you're hunting along the east edge of the field on is still in shadow, and they'll come out and they'll stand in that shadow spot more than in the sunlit spot too, because
Yep.
they're looking for predators in the sun spot and they want to hide in the shadow spot. So hunting on that shadowy side is going to be the area that they're going to be coming out in the field at anyway.
And just to piggyback off your comment about not being lit up by the sun in your face, having it behind you is even more advantageous. Obviously, one, it's not lighting you up, but two, think about a bright light behind somebody. It's very hard to see visual details in that face. You're just kind of silhouetted. And so
Hmm.
I like to position myself very often, especially first thing in the morning when that sun's starting to crest the horizon. I like to have that thing directly at my back so that if a turkey comes in front of me, it's very hard to see any detail right here, right? All they're seeing is the bright sunlight and then just dark.
Yep. Yep. Same thing goes with with deer in a tree stand too. You got that sun coming up behind you in
Yep.
a tree stand, and then that sun's behind you, and the deer look up, and all they see is the sun. Also, another thing to consider is just their scope of vision. I mean, deer have a huge
Yeah.
scope of vision, just the percent like of a circle that they can see. Turkey even more so. I mean, think of like a golf club with ping pong balls on either side of it. I mean, they can basically see around their head with their big eyes sticking
Yeah, I
out with
think
their
they can see like
little
what is
head.
it, 290 degrees or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
So just things to consider. If you can see the turkey, the best that place, if you ever want to move and the turkey's strutting, the only way they can not see you, honestly, is when they turn and all you see is their fan. Then you can try to adjust. But otherwise, they're gonna have a chance of seeing you at some point.
Awesome. So this is a really important conversation to have. So obviously, again, we've talked about we're focused very much tonight on the spring turkey season. So I just want to say during the spring turkey season, we are targeting males. We are not allowed to shoot females. There's some nuance there I'll get to in a second, but primarily we're targeting males. And so it's very important for us as hunters to be able to identify the difference between a male and a female. And I will say it's one of those things that the more you look at turkey, you're just going to start naturally being able to see without even thinking about it. But for the first few, it can be a little challenging. And so, one thing that I really like to focus on is the coloration of the head. When you see this bright red head, again, especially in the spring, because this is a courtship display. When they start to get really fired up and they get to start working up and they're ready to breed, they're going to really start blushing those colors, and those colors are going to pop even more than they look like in this picture. And you can literally see a dot of red from across the field. You're like, what the heck is that red over there? And then it moves. You're like, oh, that's a turkey's head because that red really, really pops. Where the hens, the females, it's more of a blue gray. It's not going to have that red coloration to it. And another thing that's important to note right up front is the overall coloration of the body. Jason, could you go forward 2 slides? Just I want to quickly talk about this
Yep.
because I think it makes sense to have there. So these are the breast feathers between a male on the left and a female on the right. And so if you look at the left, it's black tipped, right? So it's a very black, solid black bar across that breast feather. And so this is really good for us as scouting. When I'm walking around and I see just breast feathers laying on the ground, because birds lose a lot of feathers. It just happens. You can instantly tell, oh, is that a hen or is that a gobbler? But now go back to that same slide, Jason, and think about that, how that looks on the bird. So that your males are going to be a lot more jet black, where the females are going to be kind of this drab, kind of brownish coloration. And again, I won't lie, it's difficult to see unless they're right next to each other until you start to develop that search image. Yeah, that's a good representation there. You can really see the darkness between the coloration of those birds. So again, we're looking for that red head, we're looking for that dark coloration. But more importantly, what we're looking for is the presence or absence of a beard. So I talked about we're only targeting males. In reality, the way the legality is written, we're targeting hen or bearded birds. So we're trying to target a bird that has this hairy protrusion coming off the chest. Again, there are genetic instances where a female will possess a beard. I've seen a few. I know Jason saw one. Was it last year, the year
Last
prior?
year, yep, I was sitting there and I came around a corner and I'm like, oh, turkey. And I saw its head and I'm like, oh, that's a drab head. I'm like, oh, it's a female. All right, well, I thought I'd get some B-roll. I gotta get the video on the slide here, or maybe
Yeah,
one or
yeah.
two. But I have video of it and you can see me looking at the hen through my phone, being like, "Oh, I'll get some B-roll for the program. It's just a hen, no big deal." And then as she's walking, I'm like, "Wait, what's that?" And through the grass, you start seeing something flopping on her chest. And I'm like, "Oh, she has a beard," which makes her a legal bird. And then you can see in the video me quickly drop my phone, and then she flew away, and I never got a shot or anything.
Yeah, that's
But
how it normally goes.
yep. But that was pretty
So,
cool. We got to
yep.
see a
So
hen with
that's
a
what we're
beard.
looking for is the presence or absence of that beard. So if it's got that beard and it's a hen, you can legally harvest that during the spring. Now, I will say just to because ethics is something that each person needs to decide personally. There are a lot of hunters out there who refuse to shoot a bearded hen. And the reason, if you think biologically, the reason why we're focused on hunting the males in the spring is if we were to hunt hens, we basically would hurt the recruitment process for our next year of turkey, right? So we'd have less nests out there, we'd have less birds on the landscape, and so there's a lot of hunters out there that just naturally will refuse to shoot a bearded hen, even though it is legal. But that's a decision you can make personally. I have personally would make the decision if I had the opportunity, I would take a bearded hen. So I'll just leave that at that. You can decide on your own, but that is the legality. We're looking for the presence or absence of that beard.
Yeah, my suggestion with that, not one way or the other, just make a choice before it happens because
Before it happens.
I was
Absolutely.
debating
Yep.
it in the moment, and you got about 3 or 4 seconds to make that, not even to make that
Yep.
decision. So you should leave your car being like, if I see a bearded hen, I'm gonna not shoot her, or other way. So
And
yeah,
it is rare, but it's of the like wildlife rarity. We have albino deer, we have piebald deer. Out of all of those, this is by far the most common. I don't want to say
yeah.
you're going to see a lot of them, but one of my first jobs outside of college was a turkey research technician. So I went around the state of Missouri and captured turkey with giant rocket nets. And it was about 5 to 6% of our hens in that area were bearded. Some of them, the beard was so small that you literally couldn't see unless you parted the feathers. So that obviously wouldn't be a legal bird because you're not going to see that from the field. But it was about, yeah, around 5% of those hens that we captured in that study were bearded. So it's rare, but it's not as rare as like an albino or a piebald or we have smoke-faced turkey. So you will occasionally see turkeys that have more of a white coloration to them. That is way more rare than a bearded hen.
Hmm. And then just to point out, there are young of year turkeys that are males that would have these little beards. We call them Jakes versus Toms. So this would still be a legal turkey.
Yep.
So just to keep that in mind. So always be, if a turkey's near you, just verify it and be ready whenever because you never know
You never
um,
know. And I
when
will
you realize
say
that there's a
I
beard
I
there or not.
exclusively hunt public land. I know Jason does too.
Yep.
I interact with a lot more Jakes than I do mature Toms on a typical turkey season. So you're going to see a lot more Jakes than you do Toms. And we'll kind of get into why a little bit later as we get into strategies and stuff. But keep that in mind. We're not always looking for, that beard that's dragging the ground, that's super thick and super lush. Yeah, that's a mature bird. That's kind of what we all eventually hope for. But that's not the reality in a lot of cases. In a lot of cases, we're going to shoot some young, immature birds, and that's okay.
Mhm.
They're quite tasty.
Yes.
So we talked about, ooh, there's some nice voice squeak there. We talked about the ability to differentiate between a hen and a tom based on that breast feather. You can also do it with scat. Now, this is not 100% tried and true. A lot of it depends on diet, how the animal's reacting while it's pooping, but this is largely true for like 95% of the scat piles you're going to see, is that hen scat will be cone shaped. It basically looks like that poop emoji that we all have on our phones. It has that little tight spiral where the tom, it's going to form essentially a J. It's going to look like a little J. And I think that's kind of easy to remember. J for Jake. J for Jake. Jake is a male, and boom, you're there. So look at the scat, and a lot of it has to do with the internal anatomy of a hen versus a tom or Jake. A hen's obviously got different organs in there to for egg development and things like that. And so it just changes the shape as it's exiting the body. And so you can tell the sex of a turkey just based on its scat pile. Which again for us as hunters is very important because again, like we mentioned, we're really focused on those toms and those jakes during the spring season. All right, so this is where we really start getting into a little bit of strategy stuff, and then we'll kind of transition to regulations for a few minutes. But I talked a little bit about kind of this flocking up behavior during the fall and the winter, and that transcends all the subspecies of turkey. That's pretty consistent across the board. And what you'll see is you will see big flocks. I'm talking 50 to 70 to 100 to 150 birds. You will see massive flocks of turkey and that's just their wintering behavior. But as spring starts to change and days get longer, the temperatures start to increase. You're going to start to see them start to break up and deviate, especially the males. And the males are going to start transitioning to more typical spring habitat, which largely is going to be a nice mix of oak hickory forest with some open area adjacent to it. And that open area is critical for wild turkey behavior. If you think about their courtship displays during the spring and summer, and I'll take a step back. When we're turkey hunting, we are almost reversing the natural courtship behavior of wild turkey. We're basically turning it on its head and flipping it. And what I mean by that is when I'm hunting, I'm trying to bring a tom to me, right? I'm trying to bring that male to me. I'm trying to act as the female in the situation, usually, and trying to bring that hen to me. What happens in nature is that Tom is going to get out in an open field where he's fairly visible and he's going to strut like you see these birds doing, where that tail feather is expanded, and they're going to be gobbling and they're going to be drumming and they're going to be doing all these different vocalizations and behavior. And he's literally just going to strut back and forth in that field over and over and over and over. And what he's trying to do is get every hen in the area to look at him and then come to him. But in hunting, we're trying to almost flip that and we're trying to bring him in, which gets it a little bit more difficult. But I think that highlights the importance of this open habitat. If that open habitat isn't around in the spring, you're probably not going to have a super populated turkey population just because the males aren't going to be there. They need this open area to be able to do their courtship display. And when I say open area, it can be as simple as an old logging road through a forest or an old ATV trail. I've seen turkeys strut up and down old logging roads all the time, especially if
Hmm.
it's kind of in a bottom that's visible from the timber from quite a bit a ways away. They'll even use that open area, but they need that open habitat. Another component they need is prairie. So we talked about turkeys being actually, Jason, can you go ahead and go forward a couple slides? I already talked about this slide and the next one. Yeah, right here. Here we go. So they are, like we said, gallinaceous birds, and so they need prairie grasses to nest. That's where they're nesting. They're not nesting just in, the grass that's in your front yard. They need some vertical structure to it to protect. And so there's a few things that you need to keep in mind when you're selecting areas that look like they're going to have turkeys. One, it's a good forest, good oak forest with mature trees, some open area nearby. And then the third is we want some prairie grasses. And so the good thing is you'll see a lot of those prairie grasses in Illinois. Again, we're the prairie state. Unfortunately, we've lost like 97% of our prairie, but there's still a little bit out there. But that's basically a critical component. If you don't have that prairie grass structure adjacent or nearby within, a quick travel for the turkey, they're probably not going to be there in the spring because they really need that, especially for that nest building and that nest building habitat.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that as we get into how to select a public land site to apply for if you guys are getting out on public land. And because just because it's legal to hunt there doesn't mean that the population is abundant at that spot.
Yep.
So trying to narrow down which one you want to apply for to give you the best chance with the best turkey population that you can guess at, because they don't really publish the turkey population numbers for each site. You kind of got to infer it by looking at some other resources that we're going to go over here and go from there.
All right, so now we're going to dive into regs a little bit, and then we'll kind of circle back to some more ecology and round out the webinar with, which is my favorite part, with vocalizations, because that I've talked about this chess match between hunters and turkeys and how fun it is, and largely it's because it's the vocalizations. If you've ever had the desire to go, oh, I want to go do that elk. I've seen the elk hunting on TV or in magazines, and man, I want to try that. I want to call to the elk. I want to have them bugling back at me. This is about as close to that experience as you will ever get in Illinois. You're going to call to the turkey, they're going to gobble back. You're going to call, they're going to gobble back. And it's very mobile. It's not like deer hunting where we're just sitting there. All right. Eventually, a deer may walk by my stand. No, we are mobile, we're moving, we're active, and we're having this basically communication with turkey. And so that's kind of how we're going to round out tonight's webinar after we move through these regulations here pretty quick. If you have any questions as we go through this, I know it can be a little tedious, a little complex at times. Just drop them in the chat and we'll do our best to address those. And if you have any specific questions after, feel free to email us or shoot us a Facebook message, and we're happy to go there too. But first, we'll start off with legal game, which we've kind of touched on a little bit, so we'll move through that fairly quickly. But again, during the spring, oh, I guess I should talk about the digest, huh, Jason? So this is
Yes.
essentially the hunter's Bible, for lack of a better term. This is where you're going to view all of the hunting regulations, the dates, the bag limits. All of that stuff is going to be in this booklet. It's produced annually. Usually, the new one comes out around the time of the state fair. DNR likes to try to have that newest digest out before the state fair, so they can have some there that they can start, releasing to the public. Um, but one thing I want to emphasize right up front, this is not the legal document. So we get questions all the time. Well, the digest doesn't specifically say you can't do this. So is that a loophole that I can? This is somebody's interpretation of the legal verbiage
It's
for
Cliff Notes.
us as hunters. Exactly. It's Cliff Notes. So there is a wildlife code, which is the full legal document that you can read through and look for all that nuance. But this document's really put together for us as hunters, so we don't have to read through 500 pages of the wildlife code and through very dense language that's hard to read. So just keep that in
Yep.
mind. This is not the legal document, but it's a summary of those legal documents.
And one of my favorite things about it is that every year, I don't know if we have an example of it this year, but every year they usually have a highlighted yellow section throughout it. If you see any words that are highlighted in yellow, then that means that it's new for that year. So if you're a hunter and you've already read through all the regs and you think you know everything, it's good to pick one up every year, kind of pan through it and see where the yellow's at to try to see if anything's changed that would impact any of the hunting that you're planning on doing.
Yep. And we had a good question. Where can you find the paper copies? So you can find the paper copies usually at any DNR site office. I will say they're not as abundant as they were like pre. I know we all start to divide time by pre-COVID times and post-COVID times. But pre-COVID, you used to find them all the time at Walmart, any sporting goods stores. Now you can still occasionally find them, but it doesn't seem like they get the quantity that they used to get. So a lot of times when I go to a Walmart or sporting goods stores, they'll actually be out of them. But if you go to a place where you can buy your hunting license in person, they're usually going to have a stack of digest there on the counter right next to the checkout where you can grab one.
Yeah, they used to have them in end caps. They used to have them next to the counter at Walmart. Every Walmart would have them,
Yeah.
and it's kind of dwindled a little bit. Last time I was at Bass Pro, they had them behind the counter at the customer service, and they didn't even
Oh,
have
you had to
them,
like
and it
ask
wasn't
for it.
even
Oh, that.
out.
Ugh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very weird. I don't know if it's
And
because it was
if you
late.
come to one of our Learn to Hunt workshops, we normally have a giant box that we
Yeah,
have open and you can grab one there too. Yep.
yep. You always have to keep one in the car, and also they're free to download PDF. They also have them in Spanish and Polish too now, or at least Spanish for sure.
I don't think they have the full digest in Polish, but they have like the abbreviated version in Polish.
Okay, so
All
yeah,
right.
so check that out.
Yeah. And I like downloading it to my phone because there's so many times I'm out there and I just want to quickly search Control F and I can go right to the keywords instead of having to flip through pages. But yeah. All right. So legal game. So again, we're talking about the spring season. We are again largely targeting the males, but there are those instances where you can harvest a bearded hen. So I want to emphasize we're really focused on the presence or absence of that beard. That's what's telling us that that is a legal bird to harvest during the spring. Now in the fall season, that's when you can open up harvest, and hens are now a legal bird to harvest in the fall. So there is a fall shotgun season that's fairly short. It's not statewide. It's only in areas that have a really robust population. Like we talked about, turkeys, we didn't have turkeys, 50 years ago in Illinois. It's not till the 70s that we really started to have a robust population. And so there's some areas that still have a pretty small population. And so we don't do a lot of harvest in the fall. But there are some areas that are open for that shotgun season during the fall. You can shoot either sex, hen, male, doesn't matter.
Yeah,
But
it's
during the
basically the
spring,
counties
we're
that
focused on that beard.
go along the river. Sorry to cut in there, Dan. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah, you
habitat
got it.
with the most turkeys in it are going to be northwest corner of the state, and then along the river into the south portions of the state. Places that have trees and prairie, not just one of either. Oh, hold on now. Come on. There we go.
All right, so required credentials. So luckily, a few of these are pretty easy to obtain, and this is a lifetime one. I'm going to move through this pretty quickly. If you have any specific questions about hunter safety, feel free to email us. But we do, if you were born on or after January 1st, 1980, you are required to have a hunter safety certificate to buy your hunting license and to go hunting. The one quick thing I'll say on this, and then we'll move on, is it has reciprocity. So we have national reciprocity in the United States, which means if I want to go hunt Kansas, they accept and I actually have a Missouri hunter certification. That's where I took it back when I was a young boy, was in Missouri. Illinois honors it. I've hunted Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas. Every other state will honor it. So it's a lifetime certificate. You really only have to do once, and it again transcends states. So really nice. If you're over 18, you can do the entire thing online at the comfort of your own time, at the comfort of your own home. That option does cost, I think it's like $30 because they have to go through an external vendor for it. We do have instructor-led courses that are free and open. I will say there's not a ton of those offered. They're they've lost a lot of hunter ed instructors, and so if you're interested in volunteering, I'm sure DNR would love to have some more hunter ed instructors. But the instructor-led courses can be difficult to find a spot. But
Hmm. And they do a good job of scheduling those way ahead of time, so
they
you'll be able
do,
to
they
find
do.
those. But they are few and far between at this point, unfortunately.
And we live in Illinois, so we are required to have the Illinois Firearm Owner's ID card. Now, this only requires if you're hunting with a shotgun during that spring season. Archery equipment is legal. It is very difficult. Like we talked about, turkeys have incredible eyesight, and that movement of doing this will booger your hunt 9 times out of 10, especially as you're just getting into turkey hunting and still you start to learn kind of the nuances and use the tail fan to kind of hide, and that's your moment to draw all these little things. But turkey hunting is a valid option. So there are individuals who cannot get a FOID card, whether it's their visa status, their citizen status, maybe they have something on the record that prohibits it. You aren't out of luck. There is still archery opportunity out there, but if you're using a firearm, you will need to have this FOID card. I want to emphasize it's by the state police, not by the Illinois DNR, and it has a 10-year expiration, which I think now they've unveiled a new system where it'll automatically renew. I'm not to the point yet where mine's ready to be renewed yet, so we'll see how that all plays out. But I think I remember seeing some legislation that they've basically made it to where you can auto renew, which is a nice feature. But all right, so what other licenses do we need? This is the really nice thing about turkey hunting. It's fairly straightforward. We need a base hunting license. And the good thing is, and we'll talk about this term license year. So if you bought licenses and stuff for the past fall, kiss those goodbye, right? We're going to start a new license year. But what that means is when you buy your turkey hunting license and your turkey state habitat stamp, boom, you already have it for the next fall and winter. So they do carry over. You don't have to buy one for the spring and then buy another one for the fall. You'll still have it from that previous spring. So if you bought it last year, you need to rebuy it this time of year. But you need a base hunting license. There's several different types depending on your age, your veteran status, your disability status, things like that. But a base hunting license, there's several different types, and then a state habitat stamp. I want to emphasize that's not a physical stamp. If you're a duck hunter, you've probably heard of the federal duck stamp, which is actually a physical stamp that you attach to your license. This is not that. This is just an extra line item. I think it's $5 on your license. Um, so just add it there. It's electronic, all that kind of stuff. And then you'll need a turkey permit, which we'll talk about in a few seconds on how to obtain a permit. But what I want to emphasize is please sign and print your licenses. So there's a lot of us that buy these things online. I know I personally do. And some states will allow you to just carry it on your phone and will consider that legal. Illinois does not have that on the books yet. I'm hoping at some point they transition to that direction just to make things a little bit easier for everybody, but it does need to be printed out and it does need to be signed. Um, and I want to also emphasize keep it on your person while you're hunting. There's a lot of people that will just leave it in the truck, leave it in the car. You're technically in violation. You do not have your license on you when you're hunting. Keep it on your person or in your pack while you're out in the field at all times.
Yep. And then we had someone asking if they did not apply for the lottery, where can they get a permit? We will cover that in a second.
Yep, we have a really good talk on that because I'm going to have to personally do that this year because I didn't draw a permit in the lottery.
Yep.
And boom, here we are right there. So we're still on this topic of hunting credentials. And so we've talked about your base hunting license, right? But now we also need a permit. And so your base hunting license basically gives you the permission to hunt in the state. You can hunt small game with that. You can hunt deer with that. But some of these species like deer, like turkey, like bobcat require an individual permit in addition to that hunting license to be able to hunt. So for turkeys, we need a valid permit. Now, this is where it's going to get a little confusing. So Jason, if I move through this too fast, chime in and let me know. There are a couple different permit types for turkey, right? So we have what we call a SHA, a SHAW, a special hunt area permit. Those are valid for a specific Illinois DNR site. Let's say I'm just going to pick a name of a DNR site out there. Let's say I want to go hunt Pyramid State Park. Okay. I will apply for a lottery permit for Pyramid State Park if that site requires a special hunt area. It is only valid at that specific site. Okay, keep that in mind. Now, if you have private land, you can get a county level tag. So a county level tag will be good for, let's say, I want to hunt Joe Davies County, which is far northwestern portion of the state. It's basically the turkey capital of Illinois. It's got the highest turkey population. It's got the highest numbers of turkey permits available because the population is so robust. Let's say I have somebody who has some private land up there. I can buy a county level permit and hunt that and not have to worry about the special hunt area permit. And so it opens up a little bit more options. So, how do you decide which permit you need? So, we talked about the digest where you find all the hunting regulations. If you look in the very back, you'll see these tables that on first glance you're like, "Oh my God, what in the world is this nonsense?" But if you give it let your eyes relax a little bit and kind of try to take in the information. It's actually very valuable. And so, what we're looking for here, you can see we've highlighted this turkey spring column. And essentially, what we're looking for is either an S, which means the special hunt area permit, or a C, which means a county level permit. And so let's say Argyle Lake State Park, right here, third row from the top. Oh, it's got a C. That means I can hunt that Illinois DNR site with a county level permit, which makes things a lot simpler. And the reason I say that is because, like we just had a question in the chat, the lotteries are over. All those special hunt area permits, they're gone at this time of year. They're claimed 9 times out of 10. They're always typically gone before that first or during that first lottery. Occasionally, you'll find a few remaining during that second lottery, but by the third, they're all gone and they never go over the counter. Only county level permits go over the counter. Okay, so that's kind of your first decision right there is am I going to apply for a special hunt area or am I going to apply for a county level permit? And so that's kind of what you're instantly thinking. And so I'll go over my strategy right up front. So my strategy, I never personally put in for a first season permit. The turkey season in Illinois is divided into 5 distinct segments. When you draw a permit, it will have the dates that that permit is valid for, and it's only going to be one of those segments, right? So you may get a segment 3, which is valid for that third week of the season. And again, it's going to have the specific dates written on the permit to make things easy for you. But what a lot of hunters will do is a lot of hunters like that first season. The first season, the birds aren't pressured. They don't really know it's hunting season yet. They're still doing their thing. And so you'll see a lot of people skew their application towards the first. What I have started doing is kind of doing it in the reverse. I personally would rather draw a permit than go for the all or nothing permit for that first season. Now, it didn't work out this year. I didn't draw a permit anyway, but that happens because, again, it is a lottery. But there are other options. So obviously, we talked about the county level permits that are available for some Illinois DNR lands. What I want to give a big push for, and what I'm going to do, and I think Jason is going to join me this year, and maybe we'll convince Jack to do it too, is we're going to go down to the Shawnee National Forest. So this is down south. It's federal land, which what does that mean? It means I'm not required to get a special hunt area permit. I can obtain a county level permit. The next best thing is there's so much land and so many turkeys down there that the permit allocation is quite high. So there's usually always remaining permits that go on sale during this over the counter period, which actually starts March 10th, if I believe correctly this year. So
Yep,
March
it's right
10th.
there.
What's that?
Yeah, it says right there, March
Oh, yep,
10th.
right there, exactly. So
Yep.
they will go on sale. So any county remaining permits will go on sale March 10th. So
And that's
that's
gonna be
your
through.
option if you did not draw a permit through the lottery, is to try to obtain a county level permit. And check out the Illinois DNR's website. I'll actually send a link to it tomorrow. I'll send a recap email to everybody who came to tonight's webinar. Excuse me, and I'll include a link because they actually publish a spreadsheet that shows how many permits are remaining in each county. And then that tells you right up front, are there any, what counties in the Shawnee are actually open? Is that worth going to? That kind of thing. But so you've still got a few weeks to decide on what county you want to try to go for, but the Shawnee is an option. Private land is always an option too. If you have somebody in your life that has a family farm or you know of somebody with land, and don't be afraid to knock on doors. Getting turkey hunting permission is easier than getting deer hunting permission. Deer hunting permission in Illinois is largely the most difficult permission for me to obtain, to the point that I've almost given up. I love hunting public land anyway, but turkey is a little bit easier. And one thing I'll also say, there's also county land. A lot of these county forest preserve districts or county park districts don't necessarily advertise their turkey hunting opportunities very well, but you can oftentimes dive into their websites and find some stuff out there, or just contact the site office and, hey, do you guys allow turkey hunting? And get a quick yes or no. But there are some county parks. I know of some in Vermilion County. I know of some in kind of normal Bloomington area. I know some up near the Cook County area. So those are options, but your best option this late in the game if you still want to try to turkey hunt this spring, is going to be looking into the Shawnee National Forest, which it's big. We're talking 180, 200,000 acres. It's massive. We go down there every year to deer hunt, and we actually took some new hunters down there last year for a spring turkey hunt. We have never been to
Mhm.
this county before, and we were able to get people on birds, and they had shot opportunities. We had a few missed shots at birds, but again, that just shows that you can do it. It can be done. And the nice thing about hunting the Shawnee is one, it's county level, but two, camping is abundant. And so it's a really nice time of the year to camp. And we should emphasize when we're talking about turkey hunting, we're stopping at 1 p.m., right? Deer hunting, we go from sunrise to sun or 30 minutes before sunrise to 30 minutes to sunset. For turkey, we go from 30 minutes to sunrise and we have a hard stop at 1 o'clock p.m. And so you have all this afternoon to go do other fun things. And the Shawnee is a great way there's plenty of other opportunities, whether it's looking for morel mushrooms, we found a ton down there, whether it's fishing, hiking, all kinds of external stuff that you can do in the evening when you're just kind of sitting around when turkey season closes for the day.
Yeah, it's awesome. Also, don't that all those state sites that allow county tags too. Don't think you have to go to
Mhm.
Shawnee. You can also go to any of those state sites, which are quite large.
Yep.
You can go check those out down south as well. My biggest tip for the Shawnee though is that it is if you've never been down there, you just think of it as being like this giant 100,000 acre piece of woods. It's not. It's parcels all over the place. So get any of those maps apps that you can get that show who owns the land. It could be OnX or Hunt Stand or any other plat map, maybe even a hiking map.
And you can even
That
buy really nice topographic maps at the DN or at the U.S. Forest Service offices down there. We even bought a few last year when we
yeah.
were down there. They're great.
Yep, those are helpful. It's nice to have the GPS on your phone and be able to see as you're driving, like, okay, this is someone's
Yeah.
backyard, someone's backyard, someone's backyard. All right, it starts here
Public
again.
land. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So that is what we were dealing with when we were down there the first time.
And
I was
it's a
not
ton
prepared
of
for that.
fun. It is a ton
Yeah.
of fun.
And then also that over the counter is at vendors, so you can't get that online. You're gonna have to like old time concert tickets. You actually got to go to the store, and you can go to a sporting goods store or anywhere that
Yeah,
sells
basically
licenses.
Walmart, Bass
Yeah.
Pro, Archery, anywhere that sells hunting license, and 9 times out of 10 when they do, because they're basically when they sign up as a licensed vendor, they're giving the point of sale machine from DNR, and then they're also giving a sign, and they usually put that sign in the window, so you'll see hunting licenses sold here. If you see
Yep.
that, that's a place you can buy the over the counter permit.
If you've never gotten a hunt license before, it's very similar to like the lottery machines where it's a state given machine that prints out specific things,
Yep.
similar to lottery tickets, but it's hunt licenses.
Yep. Oh, and one more thing I'll add just because again we got this question about permits and we get it a lot. Obviously, we are the Illinois Learn to Hunt program. We are not affiliated with Illinois DNR. We are affiliated with the University of Illinois. So Illinois is home to us. We love hunting Illinois, but there's a lot of really good turkey hunting outside of Illinois. So you don't, if this is your first year and you didn't draw a permit, maybe you want to look to Wisconsin, maybe to Missouri, maybe to Indiana. Because again, these are states that have a lot more public land. And that is largely our limiting resource in Illinois when it comes to turkey hunting and deer hunting and all these things, is less than 2% of the state is public land. And the vast majority of it we just talked about is the Shawnee National Forest. Where if you look at states like Missouri, 30% of their land mass is public. Wisconsin has a ton of public land. Indiana has a lot more in Illinois, but they're still not high up there. But there's a lot of other states where turkey hunting is a little bit more attainable. And so if you missed the lottery or maybe you didn't draw a permit, definitely it might be worth looking into some other states for a year or two. Just give that a try. I don't want to, again, I don't want to push you to other states because Illinois has great turkey hunting, but don't sleep on those options.
Yeah. So does Wisconsin, Missouri, and Kentucky.
Yeah, and I'll give one last plug about Wisconsin. I've personally never hunted Wisconsin. I've hunted virtually every other state in the Midwest and some in the South, but not Wisconsin. But as a non-resident, you usually are going to pay a substantial fee to go hunt out of state. That's just the way it is. When non-residents come into Illinois, they pay a lot more for their deer tags. They pay a lot more for their turkey tags. Wisconsin, actually, for your first time buying an individual license up there, will give you a 50% discount as a non-resident. So instead of paying $250 for your non-resident turkey permit, it may only be 125. So they give you a really good discount for that first year. So that's the last I'll say on it. So moving right along to Hunt, Illinois. So this
Oh,
is a website that was built by DNR, and if you ever been to DNR's master website, they're big. It can be cumbersome. It's hard to navigate. And so they built this website that's for hunters. That's a little easier to navigate. And what I really like about this website is it tells you exactly what you can do at a piece of public land. And so that they're all a little bit different. They all have their own nuances. They all have their own procedures and processes. And it used to be very challenging to understand what to do on each site and where can I do it? When can I do it? This new site makes it very, very easy. So if you're brand new to hunting in Illinois, check out huntillinois.org. And again, it's going to have all that information right there for you. One thing I do want to talk about really quickly is the check-in, check-out procedures. We get a lot of questions about this. And this is a term, depending on where you are in the state, some sites don't require this. A lot of the ones that Jason and I hunt in our area do require it. It's a windshield ID card. So this is another credential that you need. It's free. It costs literally nothing except just a minute of your time to obtain. There's a website, and the link will be on Hunt Illinois that you go through. And if you are awarded a permit through the lottery, you will already have a windshield card generated for you. All you have to do is go into the system, print it out, and it's literally just a document that you set on your dashboard when you're parking on the site so that they know, hey, I'm a hunter, I'm out here, and that's it. Now, after the season, you do need to go back into the system and report whether you harvested a bird or not, but that's pretty straightforward. But don't forget about your windshield card if it's a site that requires it.
and I just throw it in the chat, but someone asked, with over-the-counter hunting licenses, do you have to pick the season segment? And yes, you do. It's going to be very
Yes.
similar to the same permit you would have gotten in the lottery. It's just that they're left over, so they're over the counter. Some counties may only have the last couple seasons versus the first season left over, so you may be actually restricted to what seasons are available to you, but you can purchase them. And Dan, you're allowed 3 birds per permit. Could you get 3 of the same segment permit at that
Not
point
three
with over
birds
the
per
counter?
permit, three
No,
birds
no,
per.
no. It's one bird per permit up to
Correct.
3 birds. So you can have
Correct.
3 permits. But could I get like 3 if we're only going down there for a week and I'm like, man, we're gonna get into them. I'm gonna get 3 birds in a week. Can I get 3 2 season segment permits for a southern county?
I believe so. I do not think the system would prohibit that.
Yeah, I think that would work too.
There are some states like Missouri. Again, it's been years since I've hunted there, but so don't quote me on it. But when I used to turkey hunt there, you could harvest one bird like the first week, and then you had to take off a couple weeks, and then you could go back. I do not think Illinois operates that way.
Yeah, I personally would just get one and then do my
Yeah,
best with that.
yeah,
And then, hey, if you get one on Monday and your group is hanging out till Friday, maybe run to the store and buy another one.
yeah,
That
yeah.
would be that would be when I'd purchase the next permit. All right.
We basically just talked about that. So a maximum of 3 spring permits is what you can personally obtain, and you can only harvest one bird per permit, which makes sense. So I've kind of hinted at this throughout this talk a little bit, but one thing I really want to emphasize, obviously, we talked about the different segments of the season and how your specific permit will be valid for a specific segment, which again, it'll be written in big bold letters right on your permit. But one thing I want to point out is we have 2 different zones in the state. So we have a north zone and a south zone. And you can see this map here. All these screenshots you're seeing are directly pulled from the digest. And so if you look in the digest, you'll see these exact representations. We didn't change a thing, just screenshotted them directly from there. But you'll see the North Turkey zone goes pretty far down the state. And so the reason we have 2 zones is essentially Illinois is a very long state. And weather, daylight, a lot of this dictates breeding period. And so to match and make sure that the people up north are having a productive season, the people in the south are having a productive season, we have to split that season and offset them a little bit so that we match that, right? So the birds in the south are going to start breeding a lot quicker than the birds up north, and so the seasons are staggered to start that way. So keep that in mind. I also want to emphasize the youth season a little bit. If you have youth, um, there's a lot of really good opportunities for youth hunting in this state. So check those out. What's really cool about the youth seasons is if you look at the dates, they're before anybody else gets to hunt. So they get the first crack at a lot of these birds. And so if you have a youth in your life that's looking at getting interested in hunting, this might be a really good opportunity to get them started. Deer hunting is a lot of fun, but deer hunting can be boring. It can be cold. You have to be quiet. You can't talk much. Here, you get to move around a lot. You're active. You're calling to the birds, that kind of thing. A lot of fun. One more thing I want to emphasize, which I did talk about a little bit, is the shooting hours. So I want to really emphasize this because in Illinois, our turkey season every day closes at 1 p.m. And that does not mean you have to be at your truck and in your car and off the property by 1 o'clock. But if you're still walking in the field at 1 o'clock and 1 o'clock hits, you better unload your firearm immediately and make it pretty clear that you're done hunting and you're just making your way back to the truck. At 1 o'clock p.m., the season closes each and every day. And what this allows to do, every state operates differently. Some states follow Illinois with this, other states will hunt all day. But what it does is allows birds to get safely up to the roost. If birds are not roosted before dark hits, they do not have the ability to fly up into the roost. They need that daylight to be able to do that. And so we want to allow the birds to have the evening to do their courtship, to do their breeding without being harassed by hunters, but then also get up to the roost safely. So we stop hunting at 1 o'clock.
Yep. And then something else to point out that may be intuitive or you might notice this or not. I'm not sure, but some people haven't in the past, so I'm pointing it out now. Basically, some of the segments fall in the work week and not over a weekend. Usually segment one is notorious for this. So you might be like, oh, cool, early segment. I'll apply for segment one. That'll be fine. And I'll figure out work when I get there. Well, it only falls during a work week. So if you can't take off work very easily, that might not be a segment that you'd want to apply for.
Well said. All right, so legal methods to take. We've kind of talked about this, so we'll move quickly. Archery and shotguns are the method of take that we're talking here. Shotguns is by far my preferred method. Archery, I've done it. I've only shot one turkey with a bow, and it happened to be during deer season. It was very optimistic or opportunistic during the fall. You have to be a really good shot with archery equipment, and you got to be really keen into your movements and stuff with archery equipment. So if you have the ability to use a shotgun, that's what I recommend. And I do use what's called a turkey choke. I don't know if we have a slide on that or not, Jason.
Yeah, we got well, yeah. First off, shotguns that are legal right now is they legalized more shotguns recently.
Yeah, I
So it
think
goes
last
from
year was the first
410s.
year.
Correct. Last year was the very first year. They've made technology in shot basically. So there's a TSS round that you're going to hear about, and that allowed 410s to be lethal enough to be considered for turkey hunting at this point. So
Which is
410s
crazy to
and
think about if you know shotguns. 410s,
yeah,
we can now
it's
shoot turkeys with them and be very effective at doing so. We have a buddy, Adam Wojciechowski. He used to work with us and learn to hunt. He exclusively hunts with a 410 now, and he's one of the biggest turkey hunting machines I've ever seen. I think he lives out in Iowa now, but he loves his 410. One, it's lightweight. I mean, that's the big bonus right there is it's a very
yeah,
small firearm. It's very lightweight. But one thing I will say, since Jason talked about this TSS ammo, if that's your first time hearing about it, it is very expensive.
yeah.
I'm
I
talking
was gonna
very
say.
expensive.
I
We're
asked our
talking
mentor
almost,
this past I asked
yeah,
our mentor this past weekend. I'm like, how much did a box of that cost you? And I think it was 5 shots for $65.
yeah, we're talking a lot of money. So,
I'm gonna stick with my 12 gauge,
yep,
but that's really neat if you have a 410 that actually can take a TSS shot around. That would be fantastic. But so yeah, so 410s and 28 gauge are now legal, so they're smaller for any folks who don't want to carry around a heavier gun or just some people just like guns. It gives you an excuse to buy a 410
it
now.
does.
So
It does.
there you go.
And
And then
and
yeah,
12
three
gauge
shells.
and 20 gauge are by far the most commonly used by hunters at large. A lot of times 12 gauge just because that's what a lot of us have. It's a very good gauge for just about everything. But if you're on the smaller side, worried about recoil, 20 gauges has plenty of lethality to do so. Now you need to make sure your shotgun can only hold 3 shells. So if you buy a shotgun from the store, it's got a magazine tube at the bottom that can hold 5 or 6 shells depending on the specific shotgun. If you buy a shotgun, it typically always comes with a little plastic rod. I should have brought one up here, but it's about the size of a pen. It's called a plug. All it does is go in your magazine tube and just takes up space so that you cannot put more shells. Because we get a lot of questions. Oh, well, I only have 3 shells in my shotgun. It doesn't matter. The first thing that conservation officer, if he meets you in the field, first, he's going to ask you to see your license. Second, he's going to ask to see your gun, and he's going to check, do you have a plug installed? That will, I promise you, that will be one of the first things that they check. So make sure you have that plug installed. If you don't know how to install it, read that firearm owner's manual that comes with your shotgun. I know nobody likes to read manuals, but for guns, it's pretty important. And it tells you exactly step by step how to put that plug in. Very, very simple process. If you can unscrew a soda cap with your fingers, you can install a plug.
Yep. And then 4 shots, the largest shot you can use for it as well. So, and
And so
then if you're not,
that's a little counterintuitive.
I was about to
Again,
say that
since
too. Yep.
a lot of people are new, I want to really emphasize when we say number 4, we have a really good video. Well, I say good because I put it together a few years ago, but it really dives into every number that's on the box of shotgun shells because you'll see gauge, you'll see length, you'll see shot size, you'll see velocity, you'll see powder, you'll see all these different numbers. Like, what the heck does it all mean? So we put together a little video that dives into that. But it's important to know when we're talking about shot four or shot two is actually bigger, much bigger than shot four. So for turkey, personally, I like shot four through six. All of those seem to work out really well. I've had really good success anywhere in there, but you definitely don't want to go bigger than four. So no threes, no twos, no BBs, none of that stuff. You want four through six is kind of your ideal range there. Choke tubes. So this is really, really critical for us as turkey hunters. And if you're brand new to shotguns, the way a shotgun shoots, right? We're shooting many projectiles. It's not a rifle, it's not a handgun that just has a single projectile coming out. We have essentially a cloud of individual BBs exiting that muzzle. And just like you can with a garden hose by putting your thumb over it, we can constrict the ending of that and we can basically adjust what that pattern spread is doing at various distances. And so this is where a little bit of personal preference comes in. Personally, I like to use what I call an extra full choke. It's called a turkey choke. It's what most people use for turkey hunting. It's a very constricted pattern, but it allows me to be able to shoot 40, 45 yards and still have enough shot density that I'm going to kill that animal quickly, humanely, and I'm going to hit my target. And so what I recommend is extra full or full, but pattern your shotgun. And what I mean by pattern it is go out and shoot the thing. Yeah, there we go. Go out and shoot the thing, right? So you want to make sure you have a lot of pellets hitting that target area. And my rule of thumb is I want enough pattern that I can pick up that piece of paper, look through it, and do I see a lot of daylight right on that headshot? Okay, then yes, then I probably have a pretty good pattern. So what you want to do is literally go out to a place you can discharge a firearm, put a piece of it can literally just be a paper plate. Put it at 10 yards, take your turkey gun with the turkey load you want to hunt with the turkey choke you want to hunt with, shoot it at 10 yards. Look at that pattern. Okay, that's really good. Now put it out at 20, do it. Really good. Now 30, do it. Really good still. 40. Okay, now we're getting a little iffy. 40 might be my maximum effective range with this specific setup. If you feel like you might need to shoot further, then maybe you go with a different shell, or maybe you get a more constricted. If you're at a full choke, maybe you do go to that extra full. But one thing I do want to say now, personally, I haven't really run into this. A lot of my shots typically seem to be a little far. I think that's just kind of how I hunt, how I set up. But there's a trade-off there, right? So yes, at 40 yards, my shot pattern is really tight with an extra full. If that turkey's at 10 yards, I'm basically shooting a single projectile at the turkey's head. It's a very tough shot just because again, that constriction is so tight in that choke that that spread, that pattern doesn't really have time to balloon out. It's just really this nice, very small target going at that bird. So there is a trade-off. If you think you're going to be in an area where you're going to have a lot of close shots, then don't use an extra full. Use a more open choke that allow you to have a bigger spread at closer distances. And so I just talked about shooting in the head. That's where we're going for turkeys. We are aiming for headshots, which is different than deer, different than a lot of things. But for birds, we really like to pack as much lethality into that head and neck region. And one thing I want to emphasize a lot is I personally don't aim for the head. What I'm aiming for is the neck. When you hit that neck with a really solid number of BBs, not only are you chances are penetrating the brain and killing it instantly, you're also going to break the neck and you're going to kill it instantly that way. And so you're kind of doing two things. And one of the things, I don't know if we have a picture of it. We do have a shot placement, so I'll wait on that a little bit. But patterning your shotgun super important. And I like to basically aim right where the head feather or the neck feather stop and the kind of skin starts at the head. So right there in the middle. And if you're unfamiliar with shotguns, typically 60 to 65% of the shot is going to be above your aim point, and the rest of the BBs are typically going to be below that aim point. And so aiming here, right at that, look where it's going to put my 65 to 70% of the shot, right at the base of the head, right in the neck region, going to break that neck, and I'm going to have a really humane, quick harvest very, very quickly.
Yep. And we're gonna go back a couple slides. We skipped a
Yeah,
few.
yeah.
So all right. So yeah, so we'll go from there.
Yep. So let's say we just talked about shooting. Hey, I shot my turkey. Now what? First of all, I want to talk about those spurs again. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but I made the mistake when I was trapping wild turkey a few years ago that I picked up a turkey by its legs and got a spur straight through my hand. And I can assure you, it hurts like the dickens. They have a ton of strength in those legs, but also you have to really watch out for infection. I mean, these are wild animals that are pooping all over their leg. I mean, they are nasty critters. And so if that happens, make sure you get that cleaned out quick. But never ever go up to a bird unless you're 100% certain it's dead and start grabbing the legs. What I immediately do when I shoot a turkey, a lot of times they're going to be flopping on the ground. A lot of times they're dead. It's just kind of those muscle convulsions. There's still energy and electrolytes in the body moving around, making the muscles flap and twitch. I'm going to walk over to it, take my foot, and step on its head for probably 30 seconds to a minute. And usually then if it's not completely dead at that point, it will be after you step on its head for a little bit. It keeps my leg completely away from their spurs, but again, puts that animal out of its misery if you need to. That is a fairly common practice to have to do that with turkey hunting, which is why I want to emphasize don't just run up and start grabbing the legs because it's gonna hurt. It's gonna get you. The next step immediately after it's dead, before you pick it up, before you take pictures, is to attach your tag to it. So the turkey tag will have a little notch section that you'll have to mark the date on. And again, it's all very straightforward on the permit itself, but then you're just going to attach that tag. It's basically a giant sticker. Attach that to the carcass by the legs. I always attach it to the legs. It's a great spot for it. Now you have claimed that harvest, you have filled that permit, and now you can begin taking your pictures. You can begin essentially doing whatever you want with that carcass at that point because the hunt is over. You have filled that permit. You do not have to register it. And what I mean by register it is we have to go back in. You can either do it online, which is the way I prefer, by 10 o'clock the day of the harvest. So let's say I killed it today. Okay, I've still got 2 hours and 45 minutes to get that done. You have plenty of time to get it done. Don't do it in the field. Wait till you're at home with good reception, good cell phone service so that it actually goes through. But it's going to ask you a couple questions. It's going to ask you what county did you hunt the bird? Did you see any pigs or any bobcats? How old is the bird? Can you measure the spurs? And on the back of your permit, there's going to be a little ruler printed on that permit to make this process really easy. So you'll measure the spur, you'll measure the beard, you'll enter that data in, and then it's going to spit out a confirmation number. Now, the reason I like to do it on my phone or on a computer is I can screenshot that number. Historically, when I first started hunting, you had these robocall numbers and you had to listen to it go 4M, and you're like, was it an M, an N, a C? And it was very hard to hear. You can still do it that way. There is still a number you can call. I much prefer to just enter it online and to be able to screenshot it. And then you're going to write that confirmation directly on the permit that's attached to the bird. And again, you have until 10 p.m. to do that. So you don't have to do that immediately in the field. All you have to do in the field is get your notched, which just says this tag is now filled. It'll just be a little arrow that you cut out with your knife on the edge of the tag and then attach the sticker to your bird. And then now you are legal and safe to transport that carcass home.
Yeah, and then you don't want to field dress until you get home, and then you also want to make sure you report it by 10 p.m. that night through the number that's provided on the tag.
Yep. And we got a
Um,
question about
yeah,
shot placement. Will you limit pellets in the breast? Exactly. So that's why we're going for the head. One, their breast is so dense and so thick, so muscular that if you were to shoot there, you would have to have pretty good lethality to be able to actually penetrate that and to get to the vital organs. One, that's our edible meat on the turkey. Most people are just taking the breast. I take the breast. There's a ton of meat on the back legs too, and the back legs are my favorite. So definitely take those. But there's a lot of hunters that will only take the breast. And so we want to protect that breast as much as possible. And so aiming a little bit higher right at that basically feather line prevents a lot of that shot from getting into the breast feathers. You'll still have the occasional wonky pellet that maybe fly in there, that kind of thing. But
yeah. I think they're asking if it's too low of a shot, if they'd rather say right at the head.
you could. My only thing is again just the way the shotgun functions. A lot of that pellets is going to be above your aim point. So if your aim point is directly at the head, a lot of your pellets are going to go above it, and you'll see it when you pattern. And that's why it's important. Every shotgun's a little bit different. So I have a shotgun that patterns a little bit lower than I would expect. So I don't even turkey hunt with it because it does not pattern well for me.
Hmm.
But watch your pattern. So when you go to shoot a paper plate, pick your aim point, remember where you're aiming and just look at the shot distribution. Was a lot of it high? Was a lot of it low? And you may need to adjust your aim point on a turkey based on how that individual shotgun with that choke tube, with that shell performs.
Yep. And also other things are gonna with the choke tubes and also distance the bird is away from you because your shot cloud's gonna open up as it comes out of your gun. So in a shot that where you would have aimed at the base of the neck close to you might not get in
Mhm.
the breast at all, a little bit couple 10 yards back, maybe some of them will. And that's just part of shooting someone with a shotgun. You just got to go through your meat, look for any holes, look for a lot of times with birds, you'll see actually feathers kind of sticking in the meat when you go to take the breast out. So then follow those feathers, and that's where you'll find those BBs. And hopefully you cut that up beforehand so that way you don't bite in any of those because that does stink, especially if
It
you're using
hurts.
slingshot.
Chew
Yeah.
softly. Yeah.
So here's
All
some
right, so
random
a couple
miscellaneous stuff.
other turkey hunting regulations that are just worth noting. And again, we are not covering the totality of regulations. We're covering the bulk of them tonight. Electronic calls. So you cannot take an electronic caller out there. You can't take a Bluetooth speaker, connect it to your phone, and just start playing vocalizations. Electronic callers are not allowed for turkey. You cannot bait turkey. So we can't go put out a pile of corn and go shoot, turkeys over that corn. We can also not call in the woods that imitate a turkey from March 15th or March 22nd to the day before the season opener. Again, all that does is just allow the birds to be natural. Now, that does not mean locator calls, which we will talk about a lot in Turkey Hunting 102. We're going to dive really deep into locator processes and all that kind of stuff. But that's basically using an owl hoot. So turkeys have this innate response where if you scare them, they they gobble it, right? And so that's kind of what we're doing with a locator call. And again, we'll get way into that with 102. The last one that's worth mentioning is you cannot legally shoot a wild turkey while it's still in a tree before 7 a.m. Not sure why that 7 a.m. is the break there, but that's how it's written. And so there will be some instances where you'll have a Jake, especially, may stay up in his roost a little bit longer. If he happens to stay till after 7 and you think you can make a safe, ethical shot, you can, but if it's before 7, you cannot. So keep that in mind.
You might run into that on like a cloudy day. Sometimes they hang out a
I
little bit
ran
longer
into it
on a
last year.
cloudy
I was
day.
walking. It got to like 6:54, I think, and he finally took off. I was like, "Oh, you turd!"
Yep. And then also blaze orange is not required. But we do say that it's good to bring blaze orange or pink out for your walk out, especially because you never know with other hunters out in the woods, especially on public land. It's just best to be safe than sorry. So at that
Absolutely.
point, you're not hunting turkey anymore. You're just trying to walk to your car. So if you're
Especially if you
already
have
at
a
1
bird,
p.m.,
if you killed a bird and you're
yeah.
holding it over your shoulder, I always have a cheap, I mean, you can get, a cheap blaze orange vest at Walmart for like $3 during hunting season, and I will wrap that turkey carcass in that blaze orange as I'm carrying it out. I don't want to get shot. I want everybody to be able to see, hey, this is a dude. This is not a bird. This is a dude. So I'm very big on wearing blaze orange, like Jason said, when you're up moving around, not hunting, but when you're moving.
Hmm. All right, moving back over here. Basically, archery equipment is legal. It's basically going to be whatever you're using for deer season. You can basically shoot a turkey with. So all these regs are in the book, so you guys can go over that. We won't have to read through this whole slide together, but usually archery equipment that you normally use for deer or crossbows that you normally use for deer, you can use that on turkey as well. You're going to want to
And
use a
the
broadhead.
vast majority of bows that you're buying from the market are going to meet these restrictions anyway, but
Yeah.
definitely worth at least reading through.
Hmm. And then archery equipment is difficult to aim for the bird because yeah, ever seen the photo of like an owl without its feathers on? Same thing with all birds that they are way skinnier than you think they are. So you could shoot a arrow through a turkey's feathers and not even hit the body because of how fluffy they are, right? So aim for the neck, head area. Look for body parts where they meet the body. So look at where the wing meets the body. Aim for where the wing is at because that's going to be in the middle of the body. If the birds turn away from you strutting, like Dan was saying, when you have archery equipment, when you can draw back, you aim right where all the feathers come together.
That's my
And
favorite
then,
shot on a turkey for archery equipment, bar none. Yep. One, like Jason said, the head's hidden, so he's not seeing you. And two, you have a really nice aim point, and it's essentially going to drive that arrow directly through the stomach, through the heart, through the lungs, and you're going to get a really effective kill shot.
and then I shot my turkey with my crossbow deer hunting. I was walking my deer stand and I kicked up a bunch of turkeys. And then when I aimed at mine, it was looking right at me. So I aimed right for the beard and I was able to shoot him right there. And he only went about 10 yards and fell down. So that was pretty cool. And so now moving on to land access. I apologize for my cough if I cough throughout this, but we've already talked about the different types of land, different types of permits you want to try to apply for Illinois turkey hunting, but there's going to be federal, state, county, and IRAP sites as well as private. These are the general locations for all the public land sites. So you can see, depending on where you're at in the state, there are more or less depending on where you are. You'd think in central Illinois, where we're at in Champaign, we'd have a lot, but we got about a 40-minute drive to where we want to go to. So we understand how I'd like to try to drive over to public land. But again, you get down these southern sections here, majority of these are going to be county level tags. So all these are going to be available for you this spring if you haven't got your tags yet. Dan already went over the huntillinois.org website. This is where you're going to find specific site regulations like the old hunter fact sheets they used to have on the internet. So here you can go search for a site and then click on Turkey, and then we'll give you all the site regulations for the specific sites that you'll have to go through. They might have a check-in process. They may have a windshield card. They may have different hours. They may only be open certain days of the week. These are all the hoops we jump through so that way we can have public land to hunt. So some sites are more restrictive than others depending on how they're being used. They have a map now on the huntillinois.org website, which is really nice because it shows two things that are important to any hunter. One is the borders, and then the other is going to be parking lots. So you can go and see different points of access and how you can go about going through that area. There may be other mapping softwares that have better topographic maps and things like that that you can use, but you're going to be wanting to look for ridges and for fields and things like that to see where they could be roosting at and where they're going to be displaying at in the springtime. And we'll go over that a lot more in 102. You can also click on where the hunt areas are for each of these sites now. So you can click on the spring turkey and it'll show you where the hunt areas are located and then the non-hunt areas. A lot of the non-hunt areas are going to be around park office buildings or campgrounds, things like that. So those are things to be aware of when you're going to these public land sites. It's not a free for all for the whole public land site. They may have specific areas depending on the animal you're hunting to go hunting at. To help pick out some of these areas, we always point people towards a resource that not many people are aware of. It's called the Public Land Hunting Report. So this shows the harvest from last year, and they have one for every year, honestly. So you can go through and try to get a trend because weather dependent. Also, it's a very short season. So it depends on if people got out or not. There's a lot of variables that go into the harvest of a specific public land site, but at least this will give you an idea. Like I said, they don't tell you the turkey population at each of these sites, but you can at least see what the take was for the past 5 years. Go through and try to get an idea of what's going on. So here you can see Green River actually had 11 turkeys taken, which is decent compared to some of these other sites. So,
I'm gonna
what are
jump
some
in real
questions?
quick, Jason. We
Yep.
just got a question about some stuff we talked about a few slides back. So basically, you both referenced shooting turkeys when deer hunting. Yes, and so we talked about so today again we're really focused on the spring turkey season, but there is a fall archery season, and it basically runs from the start of deer archery season to the end of deer archery season. And so it's a very opportunistic hunt, and you do have to make sure you have a valid turkey permit. Now, what I like is the turkey permit for fall archery is what I think like $5, Jason,
Yeah,
something like that. It's
it
very
is.
cheap.
It's
So
five
I buy
bucks.
it every single year.
Me too.
I'm bow hunting just so that if I have that opportunity, I have the tag in my pocket, I can take that shot. So yes, you do have to stay within the season, but there is a fall archery season that is it's very opportunistic. You're not really out there calling, you're not chasing turkeys. A lot of times it's just, hey, I happen to be in my deer stand and a turkey walks by and I have the tag in my pocket and I take that shot.
Yep, that's exactly what happened to me. So yeah, so public hunting land report, it's good for any animal. If you're ever like if you're gonna do the deer firearm season, you need to do the deer firearm lottery. Like look at how different some like you can go from a site that you would just apply for that maybe only 2 deer are taken, or you can apply to ones that have 54. And that's also important because it's not just how many deer are there to be harvested, but it gives you an idea of how many permits are being allocated at that site. So are you gonna be going against 10 people for one permit, or are you going against 1,000 people for 200 permits? Like it's they don't tell you that, so you just got to guess. And using these as a resource to help give you an idea of how many permits are being allocated is very helpful. Actually, for the turkey, they do sometimes before the lotteries happen, they have a table showing how many permits are going to be per site versus they don't do that for the deer. But the turkey, they might actually do that. So we'll reference that in the fall when on our Facebook page we'll share that information. But Things to consider. What Dan was talking about how he applies when he applies for his lottery permits, that he applies for like third and fourth season, or even fifth. And then I also rank mine on ones that have a lot of turkeys being taken, and then ones that have minimal turkeys being taken. Or I throw in a south site, a south county on like the first lottery as well. So that way, if I don't get any of the couple sites that I'm applying for the seasons that I want, at least I'll have one of those southern county sites that I can go down to the Shawnee or county level tag site to go hunting as well. So I add that to my list of 10 choices when I apply.
Got another quick
Um,
question here
yep.
about the Hunt Illinois, just since you were talking about that mapping tool.
Hmm.
Basically, they don't see the animals to select on the right side of your screen. I was actually in a meeting with some of the DNR folks who run that website last week, and since hunting season is over, they've pulled some of that down and are redoing it.
No,
So they said it should be live in the next like month or so. So it will look a little different than the screenshots we share. They haven't like pulled down the whole tool, but they just pulled down a few of the features, and that's probably one of them that's just not live right now, but should be hopefully before we get too much closer to turkey season.
my tip for that is when you go to that website, when you go to Hunt Illinois and you go to that specific site, I'll go back. Sorry. Okay, so here, there may be like a site map uh, here, and you can. There's one that's like a printable version, and then there's one that's a digital version, and you can go to the digital one, which will take you to that Google Maps type website, or you look at the printable one. The printable one normally has on it the lined out spots that you can't hunt. So it might look like a hand drawn campground map from the 1980s, but it will give you an idea of where you're not allowed to hunt at as
And
well. So
technically, that's the one that's legally binding anyway. So
isn't that wild? Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So the hand drawn one that looks at campsites is going to be the one you're going to want to reference. So check that out and see where those borders are on the hand drawn map,
All
and
right,
that will
Jason,
give
I'm
you an
going to
idea
take
where
over.
not to
We're
go.
running a little, we've run quite a bit over time, so I'm going to fly through this stuff a little bit.
Yep.
Um, So the Illinois Recreational Access Program is a really cool program if you're new to hunting. It's something that doesn't get a lot of publicity, so not a lot of people are aware of it. The process for turkey is a little convoluted and a little difficult, but essentially the program leases private land from landowners in Illinois and allows the public to then go hunt on it. Like we talked about, land access is the number one hindrance in Illinois, right? We don't have a ton of public land, so this is the way Illinois DNR, and a lot of states have similar programs that they're trying to address it. It's less cost overhead. They don't have to buy the property. They just lease it for a year or two and then move on. So if you have any specific questions about the IRAP program, we actually have an IRAP webinar we did a few years back. When I send an email tomorrow with a link to the recording of this webinar, I'll include a link to that one that kind of describes the process because it is a little convoluted and can be a little complex and certainly more than we have time to discuss today. But again, keep that on your radar. It's not just for turkey. There's deer hunting opportunities, there's fishing opportunities, there's all kinds of opportunities through the IRAP program.
Hmm.
So we talked a little bit about private land again. A lot of Illinois is privately owned. Don't be afraid to knock on doors. One thing I will say right up front that has become very, again, now I kind of have fallen in love with the challenge of hunting public land, so I don't really do this too much. But when I used to in college, I would knock on, 30 different doors a year trying to get permission. One of the few things that I learned, you're going to get a lot of no's. Be okay with rejection. If you're a person that doesn't handle rejection well, you are not going to like this process. You're going to get a lot of no's. And a lot of times it's they either have some distant cousin, relative, somebody else hunts it, or they're scared of the liability of things. So what I like to do is when I go to a landowner, one, dress presentable. Don't dress in blood-stained camo, that kind of thing. Look presentable. And 9 times out of 10, you are going to be interacting with the farmer's wife for whatever reason, they are usually the ones that answer the phone, answer the door. So just be prepared for that. You're normally going to have to work through the wife to then get permission to hunt. Now, I brought up this concept of liability. That is not an issue. And there's actually a liability waiver on Illinois DNR's website. If you search liability waiver, you should be able to find it. But essentially, all it does is you sign it, they sign it, and it's just to say, hey, if something happens out here, I'm not going to sue you, that kind of thing. So that can help, but largely, usually that's not enough anyway. They're going to say liability, and that's kind of the end of it. But keep trying, keep trying, keep trying. Once you find permission, work that relationship to the best of your ability. If the gates are open, leave them open. If the gates are closed, close them. Clean up trash, take care of the property, and you can really start to foster a really good relationship that way.
Dan, we don't have time to talk about this, but I gotta say it before I forget. I would love to talk to DNR about using site-specific tags as county level tags if you have the opportunity to, because I left the site-specific location that I was at the other last year, drove around the corner a half mile, and there was a tom that was strutting in the
Yeah,
cornfield across
I
the
know
street from
exactly
the
what field
site.
you're talking about. It's the funny thing.
Yep. And I was like, man, if this was a county level tag, I'd be able to ask this person if I can go hunt in their backyard real quick. But I
Yep.
didn't have that opportunity because it's a site specific tag and you're still harvesting turkeys that are in that county. So I would love for them to open that up.
I hear you.
Just
I hear
just
you.
some complaints.
So
Go
a
ahead.
couple other reminders, especially if you're hunting private land, public too, know your boundaries. Know where the land starts, where it stops. It is on you as the hunter. It is not on the landowner. You will not find many DNR sites that are very well marked. You'll find a lot of old signs that may be knocked over, things like that. So it's on you, the hunter, to know where the property boundaries are. And like we said, there's a couple different mapping tools you can use, whether you're on public land, the Hunt Illinois one. If you're hunting private land, talk to the landowner. They know their land boundaries more than anybody. One thing I do want to emphasize is purple paint. So Illinois is a state that has a purple paint law on the books. And essentially what that means is if you ever see purple paint on a tree, that is legally the exact same as a no trespassing sign. So it essentially just allows landowners to do it quick, cheap, effective without having to install a bunch of signs. So if you see purple paint, you know you're at a boundary. So keep that in mind to know your boundaries. So we'll kind of conclude here rather quickly, just kind of going through a few of these vocalizations. And again, this is where we're going to start the next webinar, Turkey 102, and go through these vocalizations a little bit more, how to make them on calls, how to use them in your hunting repertoire. But we just kind of want to introduce these vocalizations a little bit. So a quick headphone warning, we are going to play some vocalizations. They may be a little louder than our voices, so just kind of be prepared. We'll go ahead and start off with the gobble. So that's the sound we're all listening for as turkey hunters in the spring. That's essentially the vocalizations that the males are making that they're using to basically tell hens, "Hey, I'm here, I'm dominant, I'm ready to breed." Now, personally, I talked about it a lot. I hunt public land. I do not take a gobble call out with me into the field because again, what is every other hunter listening for? The gobble. So if I was out there just using my gobble call, hitting it every few seconds, all I'm going to do is bring every hunter on that site to my location and they're going to be looking in my general direction thinking I'm a bird. So I personally don't ever use a gobble call when I'm actually hunting. It can be useful late in the evening for roosting birds, like we talked a little bit about earlier, this concept of locator calling, where you're trying to get the birds to gobble on the roost. So then I basically you can kind of view it as I'm putting that bird to bed. I know exactly where that bird is sleeping at night, and then I know exactly where he's going to be in the morning, and I'm going to be here before the sun comes up, in a position that when he flies off that roost, he's going to be in my strategic area, so to speak. So it can be good for that, but not something I use a lot while I'm out hunting. Up next is the yelp. Go ahead and stop it right there, Jason.
Oh, did that work?
Yep. One thing
Okay.
I want you to pay attention to, I'll have him play that vocalization again, is don't necessarily listen to the individual note itself. Listen to the rhythm and the cadence. So it starts off a little slower, yep, and it gets faster towards the end of that sequence. So it's normally a 5 to 7 note sequence, but pay very attention to the rhythmic nature of that call.
All right, I'm gonna try to do it. Let me know when it goes. That way, I'm
Yep,
because I can't hear it on my end.
got it.
Cool.
So every turkey is going to sound a little bit different. And we get a lot of people who are brand new to turkey hunting, brand new to turkey calling. And this is what I want to emphasize. This is going to be your bread and butter, this yelp call. And you don't have to make the most perfect sounding yelp. There, you will interact with hens out there that sound like they were at a Motley Crue concert the night before, just screaming their lungs off, smoking a pack of, Marlboro Red 72s, the Cowboy Killers back in the day, and they just sound gravelly and very raspy. The tone doesn't really matter. What matters is that rhythm. So if you start to figure out that rhythm on your calls, you are going to be in business.
All right, you ready for the cluck? Here we go.
So this is the cluck. It's this individual note. It carries a largely a different meaning based on how it's used, but that was a very relaxed cluck. A lot of times they'll use that just to kind of locate each other. They'll just be bopping around all the time. Go to the next one, Jason. Is the next one a purr?
Mm,
Okay, so go back one more, sorry, and play this
that's
one
good.
again. And one thing you'll hear virtually all the time when you're hearing a cluck, it's very hard to hear. You're not going to hear it unless those birds are really close to you. Well, you'll hear a cluck, and then you'll hear this like bubbly purr after the cluck. And I could barely hear it in that recording, but if you pay close attention, you'll hear it. So go ahead and hit it, Jason. Did you kind of hear it on those last few clucks? It's that purr. And that purr is one of the calls that I like to mix with the cluck. And you'll hear people do a cluck purr cadence. And what it's really good for is turkeys are very vocal. They're not necessarily yelping 24/7, but they're always clucking, they're always purring. And a lot of times we just don't hear those purrs because we're not close enough. But what it's really good for is that Tom is already committed. He's coming to me. I just want to keep his attention. So I'm just going to keep doing those soft clucks and little purrs just to keep him engaged and to keep the realism of the decoy spread that I'm trying to create, keep that realism alive because turkeys don't go silent very often. So the cluck and purr are great for that.
Yeah, I highly suggest watching like videos of wild turkeys and listen to the like ones that are labeled for sound and just get a feel for how wild turkeys sound
They
because
just never stop purring.
yeah, if you
Especially
ever
hens, they are just purring 24/7.
it's like chicken in a and chickens in the farmyard or
Yeah,
whatever. You
yeah.
can hear chickens, they're always squawking and balking and stuff. So, yep.
Up next is the kiki. So this is a call I don't hardly ever use with during the spring. It's basically an I'm lost call, and it's primarily going to be made by the juvenile birds. And so we've talked about there is a fall season. One strategy during the fall is to go in and break up those large flocks and then start doing a kiki call so they all reassemble that flock on you as the lost bird. And so it can be really effective then. I personally don't use it a lot in the spring. For a kiki call, you're pretty much only going to be able to produce that call on a diaphragm mouth call. And I did see we had a question about the purr being only done on a mouth call. You can actually do the purr on a box call, on a pot slate call, on a push pull call, and on a diaphragm. And we have a webinar that will go through how to do that individual on each of those different calls. But I personally really like the purr on my slate call. It gets me fired up. So it's got to get the turkeys fired up too.
Yeah.
That's at least my logic there, Jason.
Hey, sometimes you're calling for you more than the
Oh
bird. I
yeah.
mean,
Yep.
that's just hunting.
Oh, okay. Go and play this. Let's see if this per recording's a little better. I forgot we had this one.
Yeah.
So I pretty much said everything I wanted to say about that one. But again, it's just really good. Birds are just doing this when they're out feeding. They're content. They're happy. They're not alarmed. So as that time is approaching, it's really good to just keep purring a little bit. Just very soft, very subtle, but it just makes the realism of your decoys that much more realistic. So this is usually a vocalization that you can tell it sounds a little bit like a cluck, but it's got more energy behind it, right? It's a little more volume to it. It's got a little bit more oomph to it. And this is one that really carries distance. But when I personally really like to use this is when I'm trying to show that a hen is basically fired up. Not that she's alarmed, not that she's nervous about danger or anything, just that she's really worked up and she's ready to breed. They'll start doing this cutting instead of yelping as much. And it can be really good if you have, a tom that's with hens. So if a tom is with hens, we call that henned up. And we have this little sheet here. That's basically what we're going to spend the next webinar really dive into is when to use the call. And
Yeah,
that
this is our last slide before our info.
Oh, perfect. So this is a great way to summarize. But what I like to use the
Yep.
cut for is when that gobbler is henned up, meaning he already has a hen with him. It is very hard to convince a Tom to leave a live hen to come look at my plastic decoys, right? And so one thing you can do is to start cutting to make it seem like she's really fired up. She is really ready to breed, really ready to go, really ready to go, just to try to create a little bit more urgency in that Tom to leave that Tom that or that hen that he's with. So again, that was just kind of a quick introduction to the vocalizations, get you familiar with them, get you thinking about them a little bit. We're going to dive a lot more into that in Turkey 102, as well as our turkey calling webinar. But that's about all we have for tonight. So we'll kind of stick around. I know we went way over time, so we'll stick around for about 5 more minutes or so and answer any questions. But if you have questions in the meantime, feel free to email us or feel free to save them for our next webinar, which I believe is Tuesday. Is that correct, Jason? Turkey 102 will be on Tuesday,
I believe so, yes.
where we'll dive a lot more into the strategy of things now that we've got some of the regulations, some of the behavior covered. But I think that's all we have for you tonight. So again, thanks for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful evening. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And yes, we will have somebody asked, will we post this to YouTube? Absolutely. So this will probably be posted probably sometime tomorrow is my guess is it'll be posted to YouTube. So you'll have a full recording and I'll send a link through Eventbrite the same way you got to the Zoom link today with a link to the recording and then a few of the other links that we kind of chatted about throughout the webinar tonight. So be on the lookout for that tomorrow. So thanks
Hmm.
again. And again, we'll stick around until about 7:45 if you have any questions. But thanks for joining us tonight. We hope you have a wonderful evening.
Yeah, I really like 102 on this one because I love the scenarios. Whenever we get into actual scenarios talks, if it be deer or turkey or any other animals, there
Yeah.
it's really practical stuff that I wish I knew before I started. So I think people have a lot to gain from it. So
Yeah,
hopefully you
because
guys can
that's
come
how we
back for
kind of
that.
designed it. We all kind of went through and said, okay, what have we screwed up when we've been hunting? What
Yeah,
mistakes have we made? What worked, what didn't? And we kind of built that whole webinar revolving around that. So it's very, like Jason said, it's very actionable. Where this was very much the background stuff that I think is crucial to know to be able to implement a lot of those strategies that we'll discuss
yeah.
on Tuesday.
Yeah, like one of the first questions was, what licenses do I need? So we have
Yep.
to answer those questions for
Yep.
folks. But
Yeah.
going through decoy placement, understanding the different scenarios, what's aggressive, what's not aggressive, what might scare birds away versus bring them in. When, by what day are you giving up on not going right up
Yep.
to the
Yep.
roost tree and just
Yep.
sit on your roost tree within 20 yards instead of being 100 yards away? Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate all the comments and thanks. But again, if you have any questions, we've got a few more minutes. We'll hang out here. But if not, have a wonderful evening and